Hey everybody, welcome back to Planetarium U. With the rocket scrub this week, the news is being delayed a little bit. We may even wait till next week to do another news roundup. But while we wait, I thought it might be fun to go over how to use a pretty cool piece of astronomy software called Stellarium. In the description of some of my videos, you've probably seen that there's mention of this program and a link to go download it. So I thought we'd do a little quick overview of it now. So we're going to start here with the old desktop. And the first thing we're going to do is jump on the web. And we'll open up Firefox here. You don't have to use Firefox, but you really should because it's the best browser for privacy. So I already have it a bookmark. Let's just go to Google so that we can walk through the full steps here. Now we're going to hunt for Stellarium, Stellarium, and it's going to be this link right here, Stellarium Astronomy Software. Now this works for any version of Windows or Mac or Linux, or most versions of Linux. I'm not sure about every single version, but you can download the source code for Linux. This is a free open source software program, so there shouldn't be any problems there. When you go to the website, you'll see up here at the top the download links. You've got versions of Linux, 2 versions of Mac. This first one is for Intel x86 processors. This second one, the ARM64, this is for your Apple Silicon, your M1 devices, system on a chip. 2 versions of Windows, 32 and 64-bit, and then the online version. We're going to go through the desktop version because you never know about your internet connection. Plus, it's best to use these things downloaded to your system for the best performance. You can look through the website further if you wish while you're here. There's system requirements, there's a blog, there's just a wealth of information here. But once you have downloaded and installed your selected version, go ahead and open it. And we have it going here on our Macintosh. All right. So here we are. When you first open this, before we get into it, I should say that there is also an iOS and Android version, which we may cover in a future video, but for right now we're just going to look at the desktop version. So when you open it, if you've never opened it before, it will default to a location in France. So the first thing you'll want to do is change your location because that matters greatly. The night sky appears slightly differently from one location to the next depending on the time and place on the Earth. So to do that, you can do 2 ways. One, you can go over here to the lower left and this menu will pop out. If it doesn't pop out, go down in here at the edge of the screen and just left click and it should pop out. And you can go to location window. Okay, you can also hit F6, which you see there. So go ahead and do that. Here you can search your city. You can also click on this map to change your location. If you don't find your city here, you can get your coordinates, which you can get those from Google Maps. And you can just directly enter your latitude, longitude, and elevation, which helps determine where the horizon is displayed. Okay, it's pretty simple. Once you have entered your own location, if it wasn't on the list, you can click Add to List. And then it will be on this list the next time that you use Stellarium. So we're just going to leave it set to my location here in the southeast. Okay, so I have this set up so that whenever I open Stellarium, it goes to my location and it sets automatically at 10 p.m. for whatever day it is. Okay, so if you look at the bottom of the screen here, you have the field of view, you have, well, all the way over here, you have your location and elevation. Here you have the field of view, the current FPS that or frames per second that the system is running at. I do not have a extremely powerful laptop that we're running this on right now, so we're not getting very high FPS. You have your date. This is year 2022, 8/30, August 30. That's today. Set for in the future. So this is 10 p.m., which is UTC minus 4. Okay, UTC, that's universal time. So this means this UTC minus 4, because it's daylight time, that tells you that I'm set to Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, and it is 24-hour format. If you don't use 24-hour format, I suggest that you do that. That is a huge benefit for adding and subtracting time. It is so simple. You have 0 to 24 for the hours, and it's easy addition and subtraction. Plus, clarity. You don't have to fool with the AM and PM anymore. So like I say, if you're not using a 24-hour clock, please, I urge you to do so, because it makes life so much easier. And if you really want to get into astronomy, you just about have to, because we use 24-hour format for everything. We also use universal time for everything, but we won't deal with universal time too much today, because we don't want to overwhelm. Today is just to look briefly at how Stellarium works and how you can use it along with our videos to explore the night sky. Because we're not always going to talk about every little thing, but you might see something in a video that piques your interest, and you could look it up on Stellarium and then leave us a comment asking a question, or send an email to the.planetarium.u@gmail.com and let us know what you think and what you would like help with. Okay? So you can do that anytime. Drop a comment, send us an email. We love to hear from you. Okay, so once you get your location set up, you may want to adjust your time. Like I said, I have this defaulted to 10 p.m. Eastern, because that's when the sky this time of year gets good and dark. Okay, the sun sets quite a bit earlier than that, but if you want a nice dark sky, it happens at about 10 p.m. It is happening earlier and earlier, because we're just a few days out now from the September equinox, which would be the beginning of fall here in the northern hemisphere. But let's see. Once you get that going, to set the time, again, you can mouse over here. But you can also just hit F5 on the keyboard. All right, so here you go. You got the day and time, year, month, day, and here is your hours, minutes, and seconds. Okay, so if you want to look at about sunset, or if you actually want to find sunset, let's look to the west here. And you can see the sun is on the horizon. Let's change the hours. The moon is a waxing crescent right now, so it's very near the sun in the sky. So as we go down, you can see it's still waiting to get dark. So I want to stay on date and time here. Okay, so there's 10 o'clock, there's 9 o'clock. Still have significant sky glow. You can see down there. So this will give you can set this to any time. It doesn't have to be during the day. It doesn't have to be during the night. It can be during the day, and it'll show you solar position. Don't look at the sun. You can look at this sun, but that's because it's a fake sun. Never look at the real sun. It can really hurt your eyes. Okay, so let's. You can also just click in here and directly add. Numbers. Okay. Go back to the south. So once you get your date and time set up, then you can start looking at what's up there. we see here in the south, if you want to look at any particular direction, you can left click and drag to spin around. Okay. You can drag up to look up at what's called the zenith. And you can see right here we have the summer triangle. We've talked about that. All right, that's high overhead tonight. This path of light here, this is the Milky Way. That's the plane of our galaxy. It's the light from many millions of stars that are so far away that we just see them as a cloud of light. Now, if you have light pollution where you're at, you probably won't see that. And depending on the light pollution, you'll see more or less of it. Okay, another handy tip is to change the direction you're looking. You can just hit Shift and then the letter that corresponds to the direction. So E for east, W for west, N for north, S for south. So let's go back to looking south. If you're still looking up at the zenith, it will orient you. Oops. Let's go back down to our horizon. We'll look directly south. Now, a handy hint for looking at things up here is to have the constellation lines. So you can do that by going down to the bottom, and you'll see there are some selections here. Now, by default, I'm not sure that they will all be here. The two asterism buttons that you see here, I'm pretty sure that I had to add those. But the constellation buttons, I'm pretty sure those are all there by default. But you can see there are keyboard letters. So this would be the letter C, so you hit the letter C, and the constellation lines will show up. If you want to get the constellation labels, you can click the button here or hit V on the keyboard, and you can see them there. There's also artwork that's involved in this. If you hit R or hit this button, you'll get artwork for the constellations, which is pretty cool. This is useful. I use this in production quite a bit. When you're trying to see what's actually up there in preparation for observing the sky, though, the art can be a little bit distracting. So the labels and the lines are probably the most useful things that you'll see. So looking at things we've talked about before, you'll see the teapot here of Sagittarius. You'll see the rest of the constellation is indicated here. And if you click on the art, you see it is a Centaur Archer. Okay, taking back out. Corona Australis, which is a dimmer constellation that we haven't really mentioned in our videos before. The Southern Crown. Australis means of the south or southern. Corona means crown in Latin. Okay, it's a big C shape. Our friend Scorpius is the big fishhook over here. So the stinger, Shaula, is here. The star is called Shaula. The tail, the body, and to the head. And if we press R to turn on the art, you can see their artwork doesn't exactly line up the way that you would expect it to. Especially since Libra over here traditionally was part of the constellation Scorpius. These were the claws, particularly these bright stars here. These were the claws of the Scorpion originally. So the head would have been in this region. Maybe these might have been eyes even, these three. Scorpions are arachnids, so I'm pretty sure they have 8 eyes. Could have 10. And it may vary from species to species, I'm not sure. But at any rate, these could be the eyes of the scorpion, these 3. And then the tips of the claws out here. So the artwork doesn't exactly line up, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what you can imagine. After all, the constellations are imaginary. If you make up your own, then those are technically called asterisms, but these lines and this artwork are just general guidelines. Now, what is official is regions of the sky. There are 88 constellations altogether, and they make up a complete map of the sky when you think of them as regions. So that's where this fourth button over here, Constellation Boundaries, comes in. We're going to turn the art off and just look at the lines and the excuse me, the outlines and the boundaries. So you see the red lines here. These are that sky map. These are the portions of the sky map I was talking about. And this is why the International Astronomical Union has divided the sky up into 88 constellations. So from an astronomical perspective, and I'm talking about professional astronomy here, when we talk about a constellation, we're not merely talking about the picture, okay? We are talking about the region. So, for instance, for Sagittarius here, when an astronomer talks about anything that is in the constellation of Sagittarius, whether it be a star, a planet, a galaxy, a black hole, a nebula, any kind of object, if it's mentioned to be in the constellation of da-da-da, we're talking about inside the boundaries, inside the red lines. So if we say there is an object in the constellation of Sagittarius, that means it could be anywhere inside this red box right here. Okay? Does not necessarily mean that it is in the teapot or the broader lines of the constellation, that it's within this boundary. Now, for backyard astronomy, you're probably not going to use the boundary lines unless you're doing telescopic. If you're just starting out and you're just out there with just your eyes, you don't really need the boundary lines, but you can use this software with a telescope. So that is really handy if you decide to expand your experience beyond naked eye astronomy. Okay, let's click back to the standard southern view. Now, something else I want to talk about before we go on to a brief overview of what's actually up in the sky tonight. I thought that might be fun since we actually have Stellarium open, is to talk about the planets. So if you look over here in the east-southeast, you can see here that Jupiter and Saturn are both in the east-southeast part of the sky this evening. So actually, let me go ahead and turn the constellation lines off and the labels. All right, so we've got 4 Vesta here. That's an asteroid. You're not going to see that with just your eye, but it is handy to know where it's at. So Saturn and Jupiter, here they are. Now, the planets are always going to appear on a line called the ecliptic. And what this is the plane of our solar system. All the planets orbit the sun in pretty much the same plane. And we call that plane the ecliptic. Because of that, it also marks out the sun's apparent path through the sky throughout the year. And we can see the ecliptic in Stellarium. It's pretty cool. All you have to do to see it is press the comma on the keyboard. There you go. There's the ecliptic line. And you'll see that both Saturn and Jupiter are pretty near the ecliptic. The sun will be exactly on the ecliptic, but the planets will be near it, just a little bit off, above or below. So knowing where that ecliptic is can really help you to find the planets. And again, it's the apparent path of the sun through the sky. So it always goes from roughly east to west. So if we look to the east by hitting Shift E, we notice here comes the ecliptic up in the east. Jupiter is there. Saturn is there. Again, don't ever look at the sun, but you know generally how it moves through the sky throughout the day. So that when you go out at night, you can remember generally how the sun has gone through the sky. And you can use that to help you find the planets. Okay, so Jupiter will be in the east, rising in the east at about 10. Saturn will be up much higher, and you'll be able to see it. It will be the brightest star-like object in the southeastern part of the sky tonight. Now, you might be one of those people that really has trouble orienting themselves. And if that's the case, that's fine. There's an easy way to know which direction is which. Go out about sunset. Take note of which direction the sun is setting in. The sun always sets in the west, so let's look west now. Okay. We're not going to change to sunset, but just pretend that the sun is setting here. When you go outside in the real world, the direction the sun sets in will be west. That means south will be to your left. So if we turn to the left, we're looking south. About 90 degrees would be south. North then would be 90 degrees to your right. And east would be behind you. Okay? Just pay attention to the sun, and that will help you figure out the directions. Because once you know one of the 4 directions, the other 3 fall into place because they're always in the same position relative to each other. All right, let's turn that ecliptic off. And let's think about what we'll see in the current evening sky. I thought since we're here, we might as well do an overview of the night sky. So when you go out tonight and you look to the south, you will see Saturn to your left, and that will be the brightest star-like object. Now, it's a planet, it's not a star, but it will look very much like a star in the southeast part of the sky. You'll notice this teapot shape here. This is Sagittarius, the archer, as we've said. The teapot is an asterism, which an asterism is an unofficial picture in the sky. If you remember, we talked about that a couple videos back. To the right of Sagittarius, you see the big fish hook, which is the long tail and the body and the head of Scorpius, the scorpion. Antares here is the heart of the scorpion. You notice it is a reddish color. The name Antares literally means not Mars or not Ares. The Greek version of Mars, the god of war, is Ares. So Antares literally means not Mars. Mars will pass through this part of the sky because, again, let's turn our ecliptic back on. You see the ecliptic is pretty nearby. So astronomers of old named this star Antares because if confusion could ensue and the entire heavens would crumble if anyone misidentified. But no, seriously, that is one of the brighter stars of night, and it does look quite a bit like Mars in the sky. Okay, turning our attention now to the east. Oops. If you can actually click on any object in Stellarium, and it gives you a wealth of information about that object. If you've done that by accident, just right-click, it clears the selection. Maybe in an advanced version of this, we will go into some of these features where you might really want to click on a lot of objects. But right now, this is just a very basic intro to Stellarium. Okay. Let's see. Just look a little bit more to the east-northeast. There we can get more in. All right. So looking to the east-northeast, we see this big old square. It'll be pretty obvious in the eastern sky at about 10 o'clock local time. That big old square is the great square of Pegasus. Pegasus, the flying horse. Pegasus is associated with Andromeda in the Greek myth of Perseus and Andromeda. Pegasus was Perseus's winged steed. Andromeda herself is this sort of cone shape. There's a line of stars here, going off to the north from the square, and a line of stars here. They're a little bit dimmer. It kind of looks like a big old horn. That is Andromeda. Now, you may have heard of the Andromeda Galaxy. If you count down, if you notice there are 2 rows of stars here. In fact, let me turn on the lines. Now the lines don't draw the horn, but traditionally there is a horn drawn here. But if we follow down one side of the horn here, and down the other side here, you notice the second star down on each side, you can draw a line across. And then go about that much further into the sky this way, and you'll see there's a faint fuzzy right there. Let me leave the pointer pointed right at it, and let's turn off the labels and the lines. You see the fuzzy? That is the Andromeda Galaxy. That's a whole separate galaxy from ours. It is kind of like ours, and it is a spiral galaxy. It's about 2 million light years away, but it's getting closer all the time because our galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy are moving toward each other. One day there will be a collision, but it's not going to be like smacking into a brick wall or anything like that. The vast majority of stars and planets within either galaxy will not notice that it has happened. The only real noticeable thing will be that this galaxy will appear to get larger and brighter in the sky. Okay, so let's leave the... those lines were pretty confusing, actually. So let's... but they can be helpful. Let's leave them back up. So here's our square of Pegasus. All right, let's turn the lines back on in the labels, just so you can follow along with us a little better. The square of Pegasus, the horn of Andromeda, and I'm thinking horn, like a bull's horn, sticks out of the head. Just one horn, not 2. All right, this W shape is Cassiopeia. This is Andromeda's mother, the vain queen, who is, in myth, she's been magically bound to her throne and made to whirl around the heavens as punishment for her vanity. So you can think of this as her head and her body, and she's seated here on the throne, her legs and the gown draping out, or the floor. Her husband, Cepheus, Andromeda's father, is a little bit harder to see. A lot of people have trouble with this one. Let's look up just a little bit higher. Again, there's our square. Don't lose the fact of our square. Here's another square. This is going to be much less obvious. The stars here are not all that dim, but there are a lot of stars in this area. You may notice they're about the same brightness. So it's a little hard to see. But this square is part of Cepheus, and then this triangle on the top. So it looks kind of like a child's drawing of the house. Okay, so if you have the square to your right, and you're looking at the W, this W shape will be extremely obvious because these are very bright stars. Then just look above, and if you look for long enough, you'll eventually find it. Looks like a child's drawing of a house. That is Cepheus. Lacerta, the lizard, this is not easy to see, especially if you have light pollution, so we're not going to worry about that. Likewise, Camelopardalis, the giraffe, not the easiest thing to see. And Perseus here has not quite come up yet at 10 o'clock, so we'll save him for another tour. Continuing on to the north, we have some of the most famous players of the night sky. Again, this W shape will be our guide, Cassiopeia. Immediately opposite Cassiopeia, you will see the Big Dipper. Here it is. There's the handle, and there's the cup or the bowl of the Big Dipper. So on the left will be the Big Dipper. On the right will be the W shape, Cassiopeia. This is about 10 p.m. local in the northern hemisphere, remember. Now we can use the front 2 stars of the Big Dipper's bowl to find the North Star. So if we go from the bottom to the top, we use these 2 pointer stars to point to Polaris. Right here, this is the North Star, also called Polaris. And Polaris is the tip of the handle of the Little Dipper. There's the handle. Here's the bowl. The Little Dipper. Now you notice that the words here say Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. That's because the constellation names are Big Bear and Little Bear. Ursa Major, I mean Ursa is bear. Major means bigger bear. Ursa, bear. Minor, littler bear or lesser bear. Okay, small bear. Big bear, little bear. These bears are weird. Let's turn on the art. And you'll see what I mean. Look at those tails. When's the last time you saw a bear with a big old tail like that? Well, that's part of the myth, but we're gonna save that for another story and another video. But these bears have long tails. Now, thinking about the North Star. The North Star is special not because it is very bright, but because of its position. You'll notice there are all kinds of stars around in this area here. In the Big Dipper, there's one here in Draco, the constellation of Cassiopeia, and even a star down here in Perseus that are about the same brightness or brighter than Polaris, the North Star. But it's special because the North Pole of the Earth points to that star. Okay? The pole points to Polaris, right? The star above the pole. And this means that as Earth rotates, as it spins on its axis, the stars appear to rise in the east and set in the west. But because the North Pole of the Earth points to that star, all the stars in this area just appear to whirl around in a circle. And one of the cool things about Stellarium is we can turn on our time panel by hitting F5, and we can advance time minute by minute, and we see what happens. Look at that. We're speeding it up. We're going about 2 to 3 minutes a second here. You see what's happening? We're now past 11 o'clock, 11:30. Look at that. And Polaris is just sitting there. That's because the Earth's North Pole points to it. Now, in the southern hemisphere, they're not quite as fortunate. If you live there, you know. There is no bright pole star for the southern hemisphere of the Earth. There is the Southern Cross, which does not mark the pole, but if you imagine it as an arrowhead, it kind of points to it. And we can do a southern sky version of this in a little while, but right now we're going to stick to the north. So just remember, Polaris is not important because of its brightness. It is important because of its position. Okay, we've gone back to 10 p.m. because there's one more direction we want to look in. And that is to the west. Let's leave the Dipper just in view. Oops. Leave the Dipper just in view. Okay. Here's our Big Dipper. Okay, there's the bowl. Here's the handle. Now, if we follow the arc of the handle, the arc points to Arcturus. Arcturus is another one of the bright stars in the sky. Way brighter than Polaris. And it's way brighter than a lot of stars. Arcturus is the brightest star in the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. We'll turn on our art here. We'll take a look at old Boötes. There he is. He's ready. I guess he's expecting some pretty rough company out there in the fields. So he's got his sickle. He's got, looks like maybe a short sword and a spear. He's ready. These two dogs are sometimes imagined as his hunting dogs, Canis venatici. Two stars that are just below the handle. You may notice this. It is a pretty obvious straight line of a brighter star and a dimmer star. And if we turn the art off, you see it's kind of in a dark spot where there's not any other very noticeable stars. So depending on your light pollution, you may actually see Canis venatici. At any rate, the arc of Arcturus, the arc of the Big Dipper points to Arcturus. And this kite shape is the important thing to see. The kite is an asterism. See a kite shape there. The northern crown. Remember we saw the southern crown, Corona Australis? Well, the northern crown is Corona Borealis, crown of the north, boreal crown. And it's this sort of C shape here with this bright star here. Oop. I always click that. The star, well, actually, that's handy here. That star is called Gemma. It's also known as Alphecca. And you can see it has lots of names here on the panel. Alphecca, Gemma, Alphecca, different spelling, Nausea, and Astaroth. So that star has a lot of names, probably because it is extremely prominent. Okay, this crown is a little bit easier to see than the southern crown, although they're both relatively easy to find if you don't have a whole big bunch of light pollution. If you're out somewhat early or late, you may, early, you'll see the moon. At 10 p.m., it's going to be right on the horizon. It is going to be a fairly thin waxing crescent. One of the things you can do is zoom in using the mouse wheel. Let's see. We'll hit space to center this. That way it keeps it in the middle as we zoom in. There we go. Now you probably won't see it at 10 p.m. It'll be so low that there's most likely going to be a tree or a bush or a building or something in the way. But if you go out just as the sun goes down and look up in the sky a fair bit, because the moon is 4.5 days, it'll be separated from the sun a little bit in the sky. It'll be a relatively thin crescent. It's not going to be a thin little thumbnail crescent, but it's still pretty thin, as you can see here. Matter of fact, all this talking, we could just set the sky to sunset, and that'd be a good place to wrap it up. Let's go back to where we were. Let's field of view about like that. I had about a 60 degrees set on here. Okay. So let's hit F5. And we're going to go back to sunset. Okay. You can see the sun going down here at about 8:30. Now, at this point, at about 8:45, you should be able to see the moon fine. You see it's not totally dark yet, but you can see our moon. And it's a few degrees above the horizon. Still pretty low, though. So you look in the west-southwest, you might see that this evening. Again, we're looking at a fairly thin, about 4.5-day-old waxing crescent. Now, it has absolutely started raining cats and dogs here at my house, so I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up. I'm sitting in an old house out in the boonies with a tin roof. You may be able to hear that on the recording or not. I'm not sure, but it's really coming down out there. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of Stellarium. Be sure to go out and get it for yourself. Don't cost a thing. And get it, try it, use it. And if you have any trouble with it, just drop us a comment or send us an email at the@gmail.com. The email address is also in the description. Send us your questions. Let us know what's going on. Let us know if you liked it. Let us know if you're having trouble with it. And I'll be glad to help you out. For now, that about wraps it up. I hope you have a great day. And be sure to remember, stay safe out there. Keep looking up. And never forget to love and be loved. Bye-bye now.